Hi, everybody. My name is Lillian Ruiz, and I am the instructor for the class, which is PCS 101 Summer Session 2. So, if you are watching this video, I'm assuming you know a little bit about Moodle, but I wanted to talk about Moodle and I wanted to review what it is we will be doing over the course of the semester. So you can think of today's class as a kind of introduction, and then we'll actually get into the content of the class itself next class. So if you are familiar with Moodle, then you know that if you go to the top of the Moodle page, you will usually see icons, which is what will happen with our Moodle page. So at the very top, it says General, and there are multiple icons there, and this is how you navigate our course. The first icon is entitled Syllabus and Other Documents. So if you were to click on that, you can access our syllabus, our course outline, and any of the other documents that I'll be sharing over the course of the semester. So those are the documents that I'm going to be talking about today in a few minutes. And if you were to go down, you see that the second icon says past class sessions. So what I do is I keep the current week up on our Moodle homepage, and then I retire the previous week into past class sessions. So you can access the previous weeks of the semester throughout the semester through that folder. There is a third icon underneath that says discussion forum. So this is how you will be interacting with your peers and with me. And I'll talk a little bit more about how we will be using the discussion forum over the course of the semester. But basically, each class that we have, I will ask you a discussion forum question to which you will respond in that icon, the discussion forum folder. Underneath that, I have two icons. Both of them are optional. One says optional chat. So if you ever wanted to chat with your classmates or with me or both, you could use that icon. And then the last icon says optional Zoom. So if you ever wanted to Zoom with me, my Zoom information is in there. And you can see that on our homepage is listed as week 1, which is our first week of the semester. And I try to duplicate as much as possible what we would do in a face-to-face situation. So if we were in a face-to-face situation, we would be meeting on Tuesdays and Thursdays, which means that I will be posting a class for us online every Tuesday and Thursday. Now, I'm aware that you are probably watching this video before Tuesday the 14th, but this video is for Tuesday the 14th. So the next video in class that I will be posting is on the 16th, which is Thursday. And if our class were meeting in a face-to-face situation, we would be meeting Tuesday, Thursday at 9 a.m. So you can expect that by 9 a.m. on Tuesday and Thursday, there would be a class posted and a class video. In fact, I'm going to try to post them the night beforehand, but certainly by 9 a.m. you should find a class that's posted. And what you will see is that our topic is listed here, which is the introduction, which is what I'm planning on doing. And what I've got underneath the class video will be the class notes for what we will be doing in that particular class. And you can see that our class notes say that we will be reviewing the syllabus and the course outline, which you can find in the syllabus and other documents folder. And note that if you were to click on that hyperlink, that would also take you to the syllabus and other documents folder, though you can scroll up as well. And I am not using the Moodle grading program, as you can see listed in the notes below. So if you ever wanted to check on your grades, you could just ask me. And in terms of what I'm going to be doing now, I'm reviewing the syllabus, I'm reviewing the course outline. What I recommend that students do is that they take a hard copy of the documents which are in the syllabus and other documents folder. It just makes it easier to access. So if you wanted to do that, I'm at minute 453. So if you stop the video and you came back, you will see that I am going to be reviewing what is in that folder. And you can see that at the top, I've got just some general content information, such as my name, Lillian Ruiz. Most people call me Lillian, but feel free to call me whatever you feel comfortable with. My email is there, which is just my surname, Ruiz, R-U-I-Z, at gcc.mass.edu, with no first initial, the way most email addresses have, because when I started at GCC, they had not instituted a school-wide email address. So when did I start in GCC? 1993. It's hard to believe so many years have gone by. My phone number, which would get you to my office landline, so you can't text that number, is 775-1236, though you could certainly leave a message, and I'll be checking my messages regularly, even though I'm not on campus. My office happens to be in North 328A. That happens to be inside of the Inclusion and Diversity Center. If you've never had a chance to visit that location, I encourage you to. It is a dedicated space for people who support inclusion and diversity. And what you will find, in addition to my office, is a little computer study area, a common room with some soft furniture, and a little kitchenette, oftentimes with some snacks. So do feel free to visit. And you will see that because it's the summer, my office hours are by appointment. And if you ever wanted to meet with me, we can meet via Zoom or via telephone if you wanted to over the summer. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the textbook, which is listed on our syllabus. And I've got the most current edition of our public speaking book, which is Principles of Public Speaking. The most current edition is the 21st edition by Horn. That would be the ideal text to have, though I am quite aware that oftentimes it's difficult to be able to purchase a text. So you can use older versions of Principles of Public Speaking, previous editions, that would have been actually done by someone named German. There will be some slight differences, but for the most part, the content is the same. And I should have a copy of the text on reserve in the GCC library so that you can access it that way as well. And I have a note that it's assumed that students will have a good dictionary thesaurus for reference. Not that I expect you to purchase these texts, but I'm well aware that these are available electronically, and having access but actually using can be two very different things. So I want you to get into the habit of using dictionaries and thesauruses. And I am an English teacher mostly, though I teach public speaking and communication classes. And I can say that I have the same note on all of my syllabi, regardless of the discipline I'm teaching. Though perhaps it's a little bit less important for a public speaking class, because as opposed to writing, where you really get to draft and revise, you are basically giving speeches in the moment. And it might seem odd to have a public speaking class in an online format, unless you think about how the world has changed since COVID, and so many things are online, and so many communications occur in just this very way, through video or through Zoom or through other platforms. So I think it's a useful way to think about public speaking. You can speak live in front of an audience, and you can also speak via screen, which is what we are going to be doing over the course of the semester. Probably your biggest question right now is how. And while I'll give details in a few minutes, I can tell you that you will be recording videos much like this and posting them on our Moodle site for your classmates to view and for me to view. So I'm going to talk about the course description now, which is on our syllabus and other documents file. And Just to remind you that this class is about the principles of speaking as communication, stressing the role of the speaker in the communication process. Obviously, you've been speaking your entire life, but speaking in front of a group in a deliberate way can be a very different sort of exercise. This course emphasizes the proper preparation and delivery of speeches. Each student delivers a minimum of 5 speeches. In fact, you will have 3 graded sessions or 3 graded speeches, I should say, and 3 optional practice sessions for those speeches. So that would be a total of 6 if you chose to do the optional elements. You will also participate in small group activities, for instance, our discussion forum responses. There is a prerequisite for this class, which is what we call Introduction to English at GCC. English 101, or in the past, we offered sections entitled English 103 and 105, or you've got concurrent enrollment. So if you think you do not have the prerequisite, please let me know. The idea is that you've already had some experience with putting together arguments in written form. So now we're going to be talking about putting together arguments in oral form. And student learning outcomes, my intentions for the class is that you will improve your oral communication skills. You'll develop skills and self-confidence in acquiring and presenting information. Sometimes you need to find the information, and we'll talk about that. Sometimes you already have the information, you just need to find a way to present it to your audience. We'll talk about that as well. To apply critical and analytic thinking. I have this again in all of my syllabi and all of my classes, asking questions, analyzing, interpreting, what toddlers tend to do really well, which is asking questions, especially the question why, for instance. To promote a greater understanding of communication in formal and informal settings, that basically you adapt your vocabulary, your presentation, based on the situation. And to promote each student's unique sense of voice. You shouldn't sound like the textbook. You shouldn't sound like me. You should sound like you, but being appropriate for the particular situation. So how will I be going about doing this? And this is in the procedures section. As I indicated previously, I will post a video of myself, much like this one, discussing class material by the time our class would normally meet in person. And that would be twice a week, Tuesday, Thursdays at 9 a.m. And then you have 48 hours to watch that video for that class and answer its corresponding attendance question that will appear in our discussion forum. And if it turns out you need additional time, worry not, just ask me for an extension. Your answer on that class discussion forum is what I count as your attendance for that particular class. And then any additional interaction you have with your classmates in the class discussion forum, and I encourage that, is participation, similar to what you would be doing in a face-to-face class, participating by raising your hand. And I'm aware that some students learn best by being vocal and participating. Others learn best by listening. So that's up to you to decide how much or how little to participate. However, you should be reading all of the discussion forum responses from your classmates and my responses in turn, because I will be responding as well for optimal learning. Now, we've got some classroom material that's based on the textbook, some foundational information to help us prepare for our speeches. I've got most of that up front during the earlier part of the class, and we will have quizzes on that material announced in advance, and they will be open book, open notes, and I will be posting those written quizzes on our Moodle site, and I will ask you to return those quizzes to me via PDF to my email. And the reason why is because my grading program works best with my email, and then I will return the graded quizzes to you. Those quizzes will be 20 questions, mostly short answer, sometimes multiple choice or true false, just reviewing some of the content that the textbook talks about and that we will talk about in these videos to give you a foundation on some of the principles of public speaking. We have four quizzes over the course of the semester, and again announced in advance. And I drop the lowest quiz grade, which means you can miss a quiz or perform poorly on a quiz. And if that doesn't happen over the course of the semester, you can elect to not take the final quiz, since I do drop the lowest quiz grade of the four quizzes. So the way this class will be structured is that we will have online discussion forums. That's where we do our discussions and our group work. We will have some lectures. That's what we will do via the videos I will be posting. And of course, you will be posting your student speeches. And there will be 3 that are required over the course of the semester. And again, practice sessions for all 3. The first is an autobiographical speech where you get to basically tell your audience a little bit about yourself, and it'll be approximately 5 minutes long. The second will be an informative speech where you get to teach your audience something, and that will be approximately 10 minutes long. The third, which will occur at the ending of the semester, is your persuasive speech, and that will be 15 minutes long. And the idea is that each speech builds upon the other. So the persuasive speech is the culmination of everything that we've talked about over the course of the semester, where you're trying to convince the audience of something. So the course requirements section indicates that you should do all the reading, the writing assignments by the due date, watch all of the videos. That really is the best way to be successful in this class, is to watch all of these videos. You have those 3 graded speeches with optional practice sessions. Failure to deliver a speech on the date assigned will result in failure for the assignment unless the student has unforeseeable, emergency, and justifiable reasons based on the evaluation of the instructor. Because ultimately, you've made a commitment with your audience. Your audience needs enough time to be able to view the speech so that they can give their feedback about the speech. But more on that in a few minutes. And those periodic quizzes, as I indicated, 4 of them, I will drop the lowest grade. So generally, there are no makeup quizzes because ultimately you can drop the lowest grade. There is an institutional services disability statement that I wanted to quickly review, that GCC values inclusion and equal access to its programs and activities, and is committed to fostering an environment of respect and full participation. So our goal is to create environments that are equitable, inclusive, and welcoming. So if there are aspects of the instruction or design of this course that result in barriers to your inclusion or accurate assessment or achievement, please contact me as soon as possible. And if you are a student with a disability and may need a reasonable academic accommodation, please contact the Office of Disability Services, and the contact information is listed there. So, in terms of our speeches, what we will be covering are 8 major points. The following principles. The first being discovering and limiting the topic. What am I going to talk about, and how do I limit it for the time that I have? Again, I had talked about that we will have 3 speeches, the first being autobiographical. So you know that you are going to be talking about yourself, but you don't necessarily know what it is you're going to be sharing about yourself, which is what we will brainstorm about over the next few classes. The same goes for the second speech, informative, and the same goes for the third speech, persuasive. Adapting to the audience is our second point. And in some ways, you have an advantage because you know who your audience is going to be, your classmates. So even if you don't know your classmates, you already have some information about them. In one way or another, everybody is connected to GCC, for instance. And that information is useful. Sometimes you don't know who your audience is going to be, so you need to assume that you will have lots of different categories and demographic groups in your audience and adjust accordingly. But that's part of what we'll talk about over the semester. The third point is gathering information. For your last speech, you will need to do some research, and we'll talk about the best way to go about getting information for that. You don't necessarily have to do that for the earlier speeches, though you're certainly encouraged to. Organizing and outlining is the fourth point, probably the most important piece of this semester and the most important piece of delivering information is how do you organize your information and how do you outline it so that you can deliver a good speech. Developing an acceptable style, suiting purpose and occasion is the fifth point. 6, practicing and presenting the speech is the seventh point. 7, what I call the elephant in the room, coping with communication apprehension. Everybody feels a certain level of nervousness. And 8, active listening, responding to the speeches of others. And I know that students usually focus on the fact that they need to present a speech, but you also will be responding to the speeches of your classmates. So again, 3 graded speeches, autobiographical, informative, and persuasive, and we'll talk about the specific guidelines in class over the course of the semester. I know I'm giving you a lot of information. I don't expect you to remember it all, which is why you've got it written in electronic form. And we will review as appropriate as the semester progresses. So I will assist you with developing your topic, and I do want to approve that topic beforehand. Outlines are going to be required for all speeches because you need to have an outline in order to deliver your speech. And I practice what I preach. My outline is what is listed underneath the notes below, or underneath the video below in the notes below. So the idea behind the outline, not too much information so that you can maintain eye contact with your camera, but enough information to guide you as to what it is you are going to be speaking about. And I will ask you to submit those outlines to me, which is something that you probably wouldn't do in the real world, but I want to be able to give you some feedback on those. And I ask that you submit them electronically to me, again, via a PDF, and I will evaluate them in an informal manner, a checkmark scale. So an excellent is a plus, a good is a check plus, a satisfactory is a check. That's where most of the grades fall, though there is a less than satisfactory and an unsatisfactory, which is a check minus or a minus. And again, you do not want to be delivering a speech without an outline. And we'll talk about some of the reasons why as the semester progresses. So, attendance, class activity, and discussion is extremely important. Can't be made up. So absences and tardiness will be negatively reflected in your participation grade, which is basically the responses to the discussion forum. Excessive absences could even result in failure. Consultations, as I said, you can meet with me by appointment. And conduct and demeanor, it's never been an issue, but I thought it was worth saying that each speech is the equivalent of an exam, so the presenter and the audience should treat it with the appropriate respect. Inappropriate disruptions or responses will be negatively reflected in your final grade. I'm going to skip the plagiarism and artificial intelligence section for now. We can talk about that a little bit later. And go to the grading section, where 10% is participation, which is basically responding in the discussion forum. 10% are the 3 outlines that you will be submitting into me for each of the 3 graded speeches. 20% is for speech number 1, the autobiographical 5-minute speech. 20% is for speech number 2, the 10-minute informative speech. 20% is for speech number 3, and that is the 15-minute persuasive speech. And 20% are for the 4 quizzes after I've dropped the lowest quiz grade. And that makes 100% for an A excellent, a B good, C satisfactory. I am aware that there are other letters that follow a C, but I prefer not to discuss them, especially on the first day of class. So now I'm going to go to the course outline document, which basically lists all of our assignments and the dates in which we would be doing those particular pieces. And I have a couple of caveats at the top. The first is that dates and assignments may be subject to change. These are my best guesses as to what we would be doing and when. And the readings would ideally be completed before the date indicated. So this gives you an idea of what I'm going to be talking about in class on a particular date. So for week 1, as you will see, which is listed as Tuesday the 14th, even though you might be watching this earlier, is just our introduction. Our next class, which will be posted on Thursday the 16th by 9 a.m., though I may try to post it a bit earlier the night beforehand, I am going to talk about 3 chapters in our textbook. So ideally, you would have read these 3 chapters. The Need for Public Speaking, which is Chapter 1. Chapter 2, Different Perspectives, and Chapter 3, Speech Anxiety. If you're using a different edition of the textbook, they might be in a slightly different order, or they might be titled slightly differently. But one is about the importance of learning public speaking, one is about audience, and the third is about speech anxiety. So those are the concepts I'm going to be talking about, but keep in mind that I'm well aware that you may not have necessarily had a chance to get the textbook, so you can actually listen to the video that I have and then read those pieces afterwards. So week 2, again, you can see that I've put most of the textbook up front, so to speak, to give us foundation for actually delivering speeches. We will talk about Chapter 4, or at least this is the 4th chapter in the most recent edition of the book, understanding, which is about listening. Chapter 5, audience analysis, so more information about audience. And Chapter 7, generating ideas. You can see how these topics would be useful to help us put together a speech. On the 23rd, which is Thursday, we will be talking about organizing and outlining, introductions, conclusions, and transitions, and language. And then the bulk of the textbook, actually, we will finish on the 28th of July, Chapter 11 on delivery and practice. This will be when I will give you your first quiz, and we will actually be posting our speeches on Thursday the 30th, speech number 1, autobiographical. So by then we would have talked about the details of how to post the speeches. I recommend that you post them in the similar way that I post them. Recording a speech, posting it on YouTube, and then offering that to our Moodle site as a link, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later. On the 4th, which is Tuesday, is speech number 1 review, which means that your job on the 4th is to watch all of the speeches of your peers and to send me feedback, and I'll be giving you some guidelines on how to go about doing that. So you can see the importance of having your speech posted by the 30th, because by the 4th, everybody needs to have access to it. On the 6th, you can see that we will be moving towards preparing for our second speech, which is the informative speech. So we will be talking about finding and using supporting materials. While you don't necessarily need to use outside sources for the second speech, you may want to, and you certainly will need to use outside sources for the third speech, the persuasive speech. What you are going to be required to do for the second speech, the informative speech, is use some sort of visual media along, audio or visual, along with your speech. So that will be discussed in that particular class, as well as just some general information about informative speeches. So that's on August 6th. And then on August 11th, I'm going to give the second quiz and ask you to review again Chapter 11, Delivery and Practice, because ultimately you will be posting a speech on the 13th. That's a Thursday. Speech number 2, your informative speech. And yes, on the 18th, you get to review the speeches from your classmates, and you get to send me feedback, so that by the 20th, which is a Thursday, we will talk about persuasive speeches to get ready for our last speech, and diversifying speeches. You'll also have a third quiz. You'll be posting that speech on Thursday the 25th, speech number 3, persuasive. And our very last class, which is the 27th, you will be watching speech number 3 from your peers, sending me feedback. And if you elect to take the 4th quiz, because again, I dropped the lowest quiz grade, then that would be quiz number 4. So that's basically a review of the class as a whole. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. What's left for today's class is basically responding to our discussion forum question, which you can see at the bottom of our Moodle page. And what I'm asking you to do is just to briefly introduce yourself to the class. Feel free to upload audio or video, but upload either or, but not required. Just tell the class a little bit about yourself. And again, I encourage you to respond to your classmates, though I am requiring you to read your classmates' responses, and I will be responding to all of your responses. So, with that said, next class I'll talk a little bit about plagiarism and artificial intelligence, and I will also talk about the need for public speaking, different perspectives in public speaking, and speech anxiety. So I hope you're doing well. I'm doing well, and we will continue on next class. Take care. Bye bye.